Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Evolving Practice Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Moss, with my other co-host.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Carey.
And we're excited to do this podcast. If you're watching online, you actually get to see my healing space in this, a little different background. And we're going to do a slightly different type of episode today, in the sense that we were feeling inspired to talk a little bit about the business and entrepreneurship of practice, of service, and what that means to us, the evolution of growth involved, and just some of the stories that we were talking about the beginning of our journey. And this came up when I just got back today from speaking to a group of high school kids, and they had a really unique opportunity. There's an organization in my local area called the Small Business Resource Association, and they do like a summer entrepreneur camp for kids who are of high school age, pretty much like 15 to 18, who are interested in entrepreneurship. And then they meet local businesses and business owners throughout the summer at this organization. And some people tell stories, some people talk about human resources, finance, everything, but they basically get a 6-week boot camp where they have a project and they learn from many different individuals. And I wasn't personally inspired to be an entrepreneur in high school, but there were some things that, looking back, there were some telltale signs. So we figured we'd talk about, some of those interests that have helped us become successful as entrepreneurs in the health and the healing space, and what our growth has looked like there.
Yeah, it's an important conversation. For me, I think the desire for entrepreneurship actually started pretty young. It wasn't so much that I desired to own a business, but it was more the desire for freedom, which I think most entrepreneurs really share. And I remember when I was like 10 years old, I received the mail out from the mailbox. And then I was looking through the mail and they were looking for paper boys to go deliver the newspaper. And I signed up immediately. I was so excited to do that. And it was something where I was like, okay, I can have like some freedom, and at that point, maybe I made like $20 a week delivering newspapers. But I was, 10 years old, and that was 20 years ago. So to a 10-year-old, that was like a huge amount of money.
That's
And
awesome.
it was something, that was able to like go and like just have that freedom of it. So like, I think the thing that people are attracted to different things in terms of money. For me, it's always been more about like freedom of experience.
I didn't have a lot of roots that were intertwined in entrepreneurship as a kid. Like, I don't have those same stories. I remember my first understanding of work kind of being like, my parents weren't pushing me at a young age to like get a job, or in fact, it was kind of communicated like you have your whole life to work. And I think that's because work was to some degree viewed as stressful, an ancillary thing that you did compared to your other life. It didn't kind of have this harmony between your purpose, your work, and your life. Like, it was like, oh, work's kind of stressful and it sits over here in this box, and you don't have to really start to engage with that until you hit a certain age. And I think I can say I truly enjoyed most of the early jobs that I had. And the first job I remember having was actually, I was paid under the table, and I was putting gardens in like the inner city. There was a gentleman who was like a family friend, and he did a lot of charity work, and he'd bring me along and pay me in cash to like help beautify spaces in pretty scary areas. Actually, I think that kind of ended when we were like digging a garden, people were like smoking crack, and I was a little bit like, well, that was fascinating, and I don't think I did it again after that. It didn't feel like the safest thing at my age to be doing, but it was nice to like do work and feel that reward for making something better. So that was where some of my earliest memories of making money and for service, I guess you could say.
That's really funny.
I mean, I remember it was scary. Like, it
sounds kind of scarring.
Yeah, I can remember they weren't paying attention to us though. That's the fascinating thing. It was like, and I could tell the gentleman I was working with, he was just going about his business working, like didn't even pay the mind. And I'm looking over to the side and I'm like, these guys are just like standing here in this, it wasn't exactly an alley. It was kind of like a backyard between
Yeah.
houses. And they were just standing there, like getting ready to smoke stuff. And they ignored us as much as we were ignoring them. And I was like, is this not strange to anybody? So, yeah.
Yeah. When I was a kid, like in addition to doing the paper route, which I really enjoyed, like my brother and I used to like pick strawberries and we'd sell them out the back of my dad's pickup truck at the end of the driveway. We do like little things like that. But I really started working at around age 14 was when I started working full time during the summer times. I worked at Polo Ralph Lauren in New Hampshire because you had to be, you could be 14. It was like different labor laws in Massachusetts. And the way I got the job, I had to.
You were sewing clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was sewing clothes, but like nice clothes. And I had,
no, I said sewing. You were sewing the clothes.
Yeah. But I was 14. One thing that I learned that was really helpful, my mom took me to like a career center because like I wanted the independence of money. Like I wanted to be able to not have to live by my parents' rules. And if there was like a video game or something that I wanted to be able to have it. And to me, I just saw money as something that could allow me to do that. But I wanted this job. My mom took me to a career center and they showed me how to make this like beautiful resume. So I went to Polo Ralph Lauren. I saw that they were hiring, and I had like the nicest resume on the nicest resume paper and this like beautiful, everything was really well done. And it was like I went there, and because I had done such a good job with the presentation, like they hired me, and that was kind of one of the lessons I learned about like putting your best foot forward in terms of entrepreneurship, which is something that matters like to this day. Like anytime we sit down with a new client, you really have to pay attention to those details and make sure you're putting your best foot forward. So that was and I look for that too with staff or with other people, to make sure that people are putting their best foot forward because it really matters.
Yeah, that was a huge, when I talked this morning, that was a huge message that I gave to the kids. And two of the things we've heard through Hermetic teachings, but one of these sayings I heard much earlier in my development when I worked at a practice in Georgia and I was an associate. We worked with a coach who said, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And his example for that was when an associate would come to the office, his staff would go out and like snoop in their car, not like open the doors and go through it, but just look to see like how tidy were they, what kind of car were they keeping. And I remember like really liking that principle. That was like one of the big takeaways for me working in this office. But it was a little bit of just noise or something to say as opposed to like something that was actually lived. And I remember hearing that and kind of taking it seriously and looking at like, yeah, that actually does matter. And we do assess a lot of how people do things, and we transfer them into different areas. So when I started networking and meeting people, I realized like it's also like a superpower that can help you, meaning the details of how you look and how you show up can also go beyond just that momentary interaction, because then when they show up to the office and they see your space and what you have to offer, it's still congruent because you showed up with excellence the first time and you continue to do so in other ways. So I really encouraged them in that vein. And the second one was like, I think this is what you were talking about, is like that idea. We've both learned the teaching, until there's better, do your best. And I just think that is one of the ultimate ways to live. And I think if a high school kid who's interested in this can look at their life as training every day to get better, they'll live with more just understanding of what it means to actually develop and progress. And I felt like those were two really big things that like I wish I would have learned at a really young age.
Is the importance of having that like growth mindset of how everything can be.
And And just doing your best, right? Like you said, with this resume, like, I don't care if it's I'm a young kid and I'm going for this job that doesn't seem to be meaningful. It's like, well, you still bring a good resume and you put
Right.
your best self into it and try to show who you are. Like, that doesn't get old, you know? So,
Yes.
and I know, I remember my parents, my dad would always say, like, he instilled that. He had a very much of an attitude, like, you want to show up with your best, even if you don't want to be doing it at that
Right.
time. Like, you
Right.
still owe it to yourself, if you committed to doing this thing, to do it your best. And I think that goes a long way. And maybe it's going out of style for many people, but I think it's truly going to set people apart, especially in the healing profession too. Helps people see you're always growing to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're in both of you and I are in the service business, so it's all about serving people. It's
Hmm.
not like we're necessarily selling a software product that's hands off after we sell it or anything like that. But
Mm.
this principle applies to so much. I have a rental property, and
Mm.
I
That's a good
had
one.
to, yeah. There's tenants in the rental property, and the most recent tenants who are there. I, I was like getting ready to show the property, and I received this beautiful letter from, it was posted on Zillow or something like that. And I received this beautiful letter from the people telling me like how much they enjoyed the area and how much they
Mm.
really like telling me about them. And like, it was just written so nicely, how much they would like love to be in there and that type of thing. And it just stood out from all the other,
Mm.
postings and responses. So I end up just showing it to this one family, and that was it. It was a great fit, but it was
Mm.
them putting themselves out there in that way by taking that response with the letter and the caring. And
Yeah.
it really, like, all aspects of life, I think, can really be improved by people bring forth that attention to detail and like a little bit of extra effort there.
Yeah, and the one thing I said to them, and I don't know if I ever made this connection, I feel like it exemplifies gratitude in where you are. So it's kind of like, we've talked about this in chiropractic, or I've had other chiropractors, discuss it, is like, as you grow, right? Your office, this is true of any healer, your office probably isn't the end product the day you open it, right? It's
Yeah.
not up to the level of maybe you want it to be in all aspects. But if you treat it as the best it is in that moment, and you're grateful for the changes that you make to make it better, people aren't going to look around and feel like you don't deserve it. Right.
Yeah.
So if there's this attitude of, like, you're kind of complaining with another, oh, this isn't as good as I want it to be, it's nice to know those things that you want to make it better. But I think it's the expression when people have, like, oh, this isn't really up to par, this isn't that good, that gets carried. And then when the changes are made, it's not necessarily like people are as excited or cheering you on. But when you're just always mining the area to just kind of improve it, sharpening,
Yeah.
polishing, whatever it is, people notice that. And then that carries over, because that's like, well, the way you do everything is to make it better. So you're going to do that with my care. You're going to do
Yeah.
that with your technique. And part of what I love with the mystery healings and everything is, because it's lineage, we care about the way things are done. It's
Yeah.
not, it's done in a precise, there's a precision within the modality that is cared for and passed on and delivered in a certain way. And that does matter in everything we do.
Yeah. Yeah, we still go back for recertifications every year, and do the modality, and then we're critiqued on the different modalities. And
Hmm.
yeah, I've been doing it for so many years, and this year still, it's like there's takeaways from the critique. It's like, okay, like I could do this piece a little bit better by, just shifting a slight way of what I was doing, but
Hmm.
it improved my ability to do the modality, and that
Me
is
too.
so important.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even just like pacing and rhythm, and like, there's so
Yeah.
much we don't realize in the protocol. And I even had an absence for like 2 weeks once my son was born, where I didn't practice. And once I went back, I felt like I was a better adjuster again.
Yeah.
And the experience I had this time was, it wasn't like I was practicing adjusting, but I was cognizant that I hadn't been adjusting when I got back. So
Mm.
my focus was heightened. And I remember the first day I was like, wow, I feel sharper than I have in a long time. And it was
Wow.
just that I had that separation in that time to just kind of not do it, that I came back and I was like, well, I better focus for this just a little harder. And I was like, wow, I can improve again and get better. So that was pretty nice to just have that moment to even, because we can get kind of just going in the same rhythm every day,
Yeah,
working with people. And if you don't have that awareness, it can kind of lose, I don't want to say it loses its excitement, but it can just be a little more of a plateau.
absolutely. And one of the things I think that's so valuable about entrepreneurship is that when you're dealing in the world of business, there's so many different things happening all the time. There's so
Mhm.
many things that you're managing, and you're really interacting in this like whole world that's imperfect, because you're dealing with the public. There's just a lot happening. There's different things that go wrong. Maybe a staff person's sick. Maybe there's an issue with the phone lines, or there's an issue with software, or there's a leak somewhere. Like there's all these things that are happening,
Mhm.
all the time essentially.
Yeah.
So you're constantly like having to bring your best state forward when there may be some type of external stress going on. So
Mhm.
that's like a really great skill set to have, is that being able to hyper focus and become present, like you're talking about, and then also realizing that there's always different things to improve.
Mm. Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are sold this idea of arriving and
Yeah,
arrival, right? Like, and it's cliche to like talk about this, but I think everyone to some degree understands that you're not just going to get to a certain level and like, oh, that's where it's easy. It's like a different level brings new problems. I have
yeah,
problems that I never had at my
yeah,
first year of practice. There's so much more to manage at times, and that's kind of what I shared, is like, there isn't, other people will express that at this level then you have this and this, but they don't tell you about how much more you're managing or what that is. And it's okay,
yeah,
like, you don't have to avoid those hard things. I think it's the understanding of, progression requires responsibility. And there are some days, I know I have this, and I've used this example before, I believe, but like, where I'm at the counter at Target and I'm like, maybe for a moment I just want the responsibility of like checking people out at
yeah.
Target.
Totally,
With Lauren
totally.
and I talk about this all the time. When you work with people, they're complex. They're
Yeah,
complex. Everyone
yeah,
knows that. And when you
yeah,
work within their energy and their healing and their ups and downs and this progression of life, it can sometimes feel like a big weight. And some days it would nice to just have the responsibility to ring people up and do it. Now, I don't want that, but it's nice to
right.
have the realization of like,
Yeah.
oh,
I think it is the fantasy that lives in the mind of every entrepreneur. It's like because it's just it ends up being so much to manage.
yeah.
So yeah, for sure, I've had that too, of just not wanting the responsibility of all these different things, and
Mm,
choosing simplicity. But at the same time, there's this thing that happens where you grow into a person who's capable of managing all this responsibility.
mhm.
And the world really needs more people taking responsibility, not less. So if we
Gosh.
have more and more people like denying the opportunities for responsibility, it creates a lot more difficulty in the world.
Yeah, that's kind of big.
Yeah,
I kind of feel the bigness of what you're describing. I mean, and you take this, kind of comes back to freedom. You started out with
right,
freedom, and no, not meant. We didn't start like, oh yeah, just day one into our own business.
yeah.
What was the moment for you, like, when you realized like, oh, I'm gonna really do this for myself and not for someone else anymore? What was that like for you?
Well, I was working for somebody else, for another chiropractor who I really liked. But there was kind of these things that I wish were done differently. There was some things I really liked, some things I didn't like. And then at the end of the day, the biggest thing was that there was uh, like I wasn't really in charge of myself, the way things were done. I thought I could do certain things better. I thought I would
Mhm.
like to do certain things differently, and that would go better. And there was really like I was kind of maxed out as far as how much I felt like I could grow, like personally grow, as
Mhm.
far as where I was. Um, and that in order to learn more lessons and to really like grow spiritually, I needed to branch out on my own. So it was for me like a place where it felt like my growth was stagnated, and I
Mhm.
was like, oh, the best way to actually like start having breakthroughs again is to do this on my own. because both you and I work for somebody else for like a brief period of time in terms of chiropractic, like a year-ish.
That's about right.
Yeah. So it was like during that first year, there was so much I learned, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity to do it. And then I felt like my growth just kind of stagnated, and I would actually
Mm.
learn faster by doing my own thing. What was it like
Yeah.
for you?
I I feel like I took steps to really figure out what I needed next. And what I mean by this is when I graduated school, I knew I wanted to practice. I had really only decided like a month before I graduated that I was going to practice upper cervical chiropractic. So the model that I practice, I hadn't been fully invested in my whole journey. I was very curious most of the way and started to dabble the last couple months, but I had a pretty profound kind of turnaround and experience with the upper cervical work at the end that I was like, well, I really this is how I have to practice to be congruent. But I wasn't super well versed in it. So my
Yeah.
first practice was I knew we weren't going to stay in Georgia probably forever at that time. We were at least going to be there while my wife finished her PhD. So I did an independent contracting out of our colleague Dr. Dan Tu's office. And I got to that whole year, I basically went to every knee, chest, upper cervical seminar that was offered so I could learn
Yeah.
the craft. And by the time I left that practice, I basically left it to Dan. He had no experience in upper cervical. I ended up teaching him what I know. He started training with the groups I was training. And then I passed all my clients to him in search of my next opportunity, which I went and worked for one of the largest, busiest knee, chest, upper cervical offices because I really wanted to learn how to run the business for that
Yeah.
practice. And I had hopes of opening other offices with them and growing. And for me, I was like, okay, I got this technique down. I'm pretty good at this technique. Okay, now let's apply this technique in like a efficient way. And when I worked in that office, the first week, I knew in my heart, like, this wasn't going to work out. Like, this
Yeah.
wasn't going to, I just knew something. And then I probably spent the next 3 or 4 months convincing myself that this was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And just come button up against a lot of things. And then I, like yourself, said, I really did learn a lot of what to do. And I really did learn systems very well. But I also learned what not to do and how I didn't want to treat people and what I wanted my recommendations to be. And it was a big jump for me to go from having very, very little success in the profession to going to move to a completely new location and open my own practice
Yeah.
and do everything that was required, having not had a track record of being successful before. But I did invest in areas that I knew that I didn't know. Like, I didn't know
Yeah.
how to build a practice or grow a practice. So I
Yeah.
hired people to help me do that. So, I think that I hit that moment where I was like, well, I can work for somebody else and not have that freedom, like you said, to tweak things, change them, make better, and I wasn't willing to do that anymore. So there was a big gap and a big jump, and it did work out, but it comes with a lot of um, things you don't know that you
Yeah.
get to find out,
Yeah.
right?
And that's one of the things where I think the spirituality work like weaves in so well, because both you and I got these pieces like later on. Like we
Yeah.
had already been through these the different I don't want to say grind of business, but the like kind of the gauntlet of getting started in a
Hmm.
business.
Hmm.
And if we had those tools like the life activation or some of the sessions that help bring in clarity and
Yeah.
give you a push and the ability to do rituals to bring in angels and things like that and support, like, I think that would have been a lot easier for me to make that transition, because
Yeah.
it was super super hard. And like when I got started, I was 27, I think, when I opened my practice. So
Mm.
it's like there was so much I didn't know at that time, and no
Mhm.
experience of owning a business. Like it's one thing to be a paper boy, and like it's one thing to work hard. Like I'd worked hard in my life and had these different
Mhm.
jobs that were cool later on, but it was like, but I didn't have an experience of actually owning a business. And then I jumped in. I had purchased a practice, so all of a sudden I was responsible
Mhm.
for for managing an existing business, and yeah, it was really difficult.
Yeah, I would have really welcomed those tools because you're just managing from the mind and a lot of times outside yourself. It's important to have mentors and try other things, but I think part of I don't want to speak in two generalizations in chiropractic, but I think people really work hard to kind of paint a picture that's not always the most genuine. And that's
Yeah.
true of people in general, right? Like, especially when you're going through hard stuff, you want to paint a picture that is favorable and is empowering and uplifting, but sometimes it's just not true. And I know for myself where hard was much more okay when I had the tools, because there was something about the operation of what you were doing was coming much more from the deeper authentic self that made every move feel like I was making them from a much more sacred place and
Yeah.
hopeful place where there's a little more, what I have found, tolerance in the consequence of the choice when at least it's being made from a place that's very authentic.
Yeah.
And then the product becomes more authentic. It might not always look the way other businesses have, but there's an opportunity in the long run to really make a product that you're more proud of. And when that happens, people see that. And that's going to be like the magic of the future, is when people
Yeah.
build things through the authentic self and people can feel that in the aspects from the person, the system, and let's say even the physical structure. It's going to continue to stand out because people are more aware. They're more sensitive to the authenticity factor of a business as a whole.
Yeah. Especially like the whole world is shifting now. It's more AI and all these different things. So it's going to get even more
Mhm.
important. Well, if I can ask you a question,
Yeah.
uh, if you could, like, let's say you were going back, you were going to start a new business with what you knew now. Like we're going to rewind time to when you opened up your business.
Mm.
Is there anything that you would do to prepare yourself to start the business? Like anything you would do differently?
Um, I yeah. I think what I would do. Are we talking about this day and age? Like today, I'm
Yeah.
opening this business today. Yeah,
Well,
I think there's a lot of quality um, kind of support you can receive for different
yeah.
means through mm, like satellite employees. And
Yeah.
there's ways to find good ones. I definitely have a lot of satellite help now. Even for this
Yeah.
podcast, we have satellite help that works. And I think I would have tried to be ahead with that, because I've spent a lot of money for, I don't want to say less than quality work along the way,
Yeah.
but I would try to find some of those things I don't need as much of a forward facing person to do. So the people in the positions in my business that interact with people can do their job the best. There would have been a little less crossover of, maybe I had employees designing things and doing
Yeah.
technological work, and maybe that inspired them, and maybe that's what I'd have them do some more of. But I think having a little bit more of that satellite help for really the digital build and design, because if you're an entrepreneur and you have a
Yeah.
business, you're going to need design, you're going to need some video, you're going to need some content. And I think I would do a better job finding that help from the start. That's
Yeah.
one thing I would say.
I do the same. I have obviously we have a structure in place for this podcast, and then for my practice, I have somebody who coordinates and writes up like beautiful emails for us. Who manages
Mhm.
Facebook and Instagram, and we'll create flyers or different. Maybe we're doing a promotion or these different things, and does beautiful design work.
Mm.
And it's something that at the beginning I was having. It wasn't like a natural strength of mine. I would try to do it, or I'd have my front desk assistants to try to do it. And it's just that
Mm.
it wasn't their natural strengths either. So it was just something that wasn't being done as well as it could have been. And
Yeah.
having that person is really helpful. Uh,
Yeah.
one,
I also think the one thing I want to add is, I think I would have kept my focus long term a lot
yeah,
stronger in the early years. I would have tried to remind myself, like I think it's Tony Robbins who said, you can accomplish more in most people I don't even know how it goes, but it's something like, if most people can accomplish more in 10 years than they ever dreamed in less than like a year, or something
Yeah.
along those lines. I might be totally missing it. Or we basically think we can do a lot more in a short period of time. But if we kept our mindset on the long-term goal, we'd make a little bit different decisions along the way that would maybe increase retention, keep people longer. It would just make us move in a slightly different way. So I think I'd really get clear on the long-term vision. And now, since I've gotten in my 40s, I guess you can say and maybe you feel this, I feel myself like, okay, I had 10 years of practice. What do I want my next 10 years to look like? And it's a lot more methodical than the first 10. It's a little slower and more, grounded than the last 10 years, where I enjoyed trying everything.
Right. Yeah. And just much more picky with what you're going to be doing, what you're saying yes to and no to.
Yeah. That's a good question. How would you answer that?
Well, what I would say is, like, if I was to go back in time, one thing I would, or tell anybody, if you're thinking about like starting a business, like, get your health really well together, because you don't realize like how much stress is going to come with it at the beginning. It's going to be unavoidable. There's going to be a lot of big stresses that happen that first year, even just the emotional stresses of managing the business, the different fears and stuff that you have to work through. And there's just like, there's a lot of hitting the pavement. There's a lot of different things that, you're going to have to exert a lot of energy. So you really kind of want to go into it with a full cup. So like, if you're going to almost like it, like you're training for like a marathon or something like that, because you essentially are. So like, get your health in that good place where you can do that, because for the next, that first year, at least, you're going to be really, like, it's probably like having a newborn baby in a way.
That's a great recommendation. And actually, I think that's been in our conversations recently. We've both probably upped our game as far as health is concerned and the activities that we're taking. And it doesn't matter as much when you're older, right? You can wing it. You can stay up. You can work out here. You can work out there. You can eat less healthy, and you can go out and drink and do all these things and have a little less energy and get away with it. But not that you'd want to get away with it, but you can't do that as much in as you get older. And I definitely have noticed the last year I've chosen to take more of that serious, and it's given me some new vitality. I have been much more committed and consistent, and it does matter. Your health and your stress levels really do affect the mind and how you perform in your business. And it's really important. So I love that advice.
Yeah, because it's like, we all, if you're going to put all the effort forth to having a business, you want to be able to do it long term. And I think the health is something that really can take out a lot of business owners. And it is like, there's a lot of stress that goes with it. So, stress is not the best thing for our health, but it is like, you want to have those health reserves high, if you will, like kind of a shield, so that you can take a hit if that's what happens, because you're probably going through that first year.
And I'll say this, like, our podcast is for people who are seeking healing and service providers, but anybody that works with people, like, if I could have had the protection and the flow and the tools that the initiation and Empower Thyself bring at a much earlier time, I would have done a lot of things differently naturally, and not from the mind. I would have just moved in a way that was a little bit different. I would have saved myself some grief, challenge, worry, stress. And I just think it's the best thing that a person who works with other people can do for themselves. And I don't know if I express that enough to the clients that I work with from time to time, but I mean, I noticed like an immediate difference when I worked day of serving people in chiropractic, when I was using the tools with initiation versus when I wasn't. It was so night and day and people would say, how do you not take home all of this? And I remember that question being asked to speakers on stage, chiropractic, for ages prior to. And personally, that's the answer to that question. Everybody else has kind of conjured up ways of the mind to like trick yourself to not worry about it. But you don't realize the intertwined nature of the energies of yourself and your clients that get mixed up
Right.
until you have the clarity with that event, with initiation. And it is just so helpful to work with people, care for people with that. And I would have never done this path. I would have never done the spiritual path if I
Right.
didn't really experience it to that degree, because I just the optics of it, I was like, well, I'm not like that, or I don't fit in this box. But
Yeah.
the results were so real for myself that it became, it would be the cornerstone for myself if I was going into this and I knew what I knew now.
Yeah. Like if you and I have a secret sauce, that's really what it
Yeah.
is. It's not so much
Yeah.
of a secret because we say it, but
Mhm.
it's hard for people to, I think, understand, because it's like it is something that it's just different. It's like it sounds more abstract, but for
Yeah.
us, it's very, very real. Like it's affecting how we think, how we feel, how we perceive, like the next action steps we're going to take, like what we're aware
Mhm.
of, what we're not aware of, what
Yeah.
we're holding on to, what we can more easily let go of,
Mhm.
because like that, all those things, they matter so much to us. Like I remember talking to a friend, and their father was a chiropractor, and the father had like been through a lawsuit and was just like kind of broken after that.
Mm.
And it's like there are these different things that can happen, in uh, life, where maybe somebody or another colleague I know, somebody had a lot of money stolen from them, and then that
Mm.
person was, kind of like wrote off people after that.
Mm.
And it's like these things that are could be really, really helped by having these tools.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's like
we
when
can't,
you
we can't say, I really like, I think sometimes we like walk around it, but if somebody ever asked me like, oh my gosh, I want to be more like that, it's like, that's kind of been the catalyst for the way I am in
yeah,
the last bunch of years. It's
yeah,
been the way to handling those
mm,
challenges. It's kind of been a foundation point, and it's an undeniable one at this point. And you don't have to believe that. Like no one, like that's the
yeah,
thing about it, right? It's not like I want you to believe it. It's like try it for yourself, and it just makes a difference. And I think a lot of people who are involved with working with people come to find that because
yeah,
the reality is a lot of people, let's say you receive initiation and get these tools and your life isn't surround or revolving around service in a way that's working with humans. There isn't this, you're not noticing you might not see the shift or experience the shift as potently as somebody who works in people's energy every day. And for
yeah,
me, it was just undeniable. And I want to continue to like express that with my clients instead of being like, well, how do you get that way? Well, meditation, this and that. It's
yeah.
like actually initiation rituals was the fastest way for me to handle my life and handle the energy that I was working with. So that's really like the first line of defense.
I love it. You
Yeah.
you and I are both people who move like very fast with things, which
Yeah.
I think is like it's a good quality to have as an entrepreneur. Like you're somebody who
Yes.
like can be very like just take a lot of action.
Hmm.
Um, but before doing any of the mystery school work, one of my business coaches like loved that I took action very quickly.
Yeah.
They're like it's just such a great trait. But the thing is that when you're like that, as both you and I are, we can also take actions. We could in the past like take actions that were going way in the opposite direction, not even realize
Hmm.
it. Almost like
Yeah.
you're getting so in the flow of like running that you forgot which direction that you're running in. And I
Yeah.
see that happen all the time with people. It's like they're busy, they're doing all this stuff, but like, is it really the right stuff? Is it the
Hmm.
stuff that's like for your own joy, your own goodness, like short term and long term? Like, are you building and devoting yourself to what you're wanting to actually build? And oftentimes we'll see with people that answer is actually no. So it's like their
Mm.
life force, their energy, their focus is going in a certain direction that may not be the best one for them. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something that like these tools really help to calibrate it. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, you can see the North Star now. Like now you can, run in that direction that's the highest potential for you. And
Hmm.
those tools like illuminate that. And you taking those action steps will help you like get to that ideal destination so much faster. Because otherwise you could end up like way out in the woods pretty fast too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. We started talking about business and we ended up with spirituality because
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurs are attracted to freedom, and freedom is, you know, uh, I think getting the most out of yourself is a good plan for an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, right? And knowing where you're good and where your strengths lie and where your blind spots are, to manage, comes with this growth mindset that people strive for, and it goes so far beyond that. And I think once we get into the energy of it all, it becomes more potent and more powerful. So I think instead of just recycling between ideas and the mind and tips and tricks, you really get down to kind of the root and the essence of who you are. And then life can be a lot more fun because you're doing those things to create freedom and know thyself.
Yeah.
And that becomes that foundation to put upon kind of the sprinkles of life, if you will, and it becomes more joyful and fun. And that's what I found. Like, I wouldn't want to leave
Yeah.
this. And I like the hard now. I like the hard, and it's
Yeah.
gotten harder in some ways, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because it's helped me to grow in a really rapid way. Where, God, I was
Cool.
telling Caitlin, who works for me, a story like just before about like this bike bar tour I went on with my friend. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh, that was 10 years ago. She was like, that was 10 years ago. I was like, yeah. She's like, wow, that's a big difference of who you are from
Yeah.
that story coming. I'm like, yeah, but 10 years is a big time, a long time, but it's also not that long too. So
Yeah.
when you look at how much you can change and accomplish, it can really be quite amazing.
I love it. Yeah. Really well said.
Yeah. So I mean, I think with that being said, that is kind of the point. We want to help healers and people who own their own business to be able to make the most efficient and magnificent change. So, if you've been listening for a while and you want to like actually take a different step, and you should have a conversation with us. We're pretty accessible. My Instagram's at Dr. Bill Moss. Yours is
That's
at
same way
Dr.
at
Sean.
Dr. Sean
Yeah.
Carey. Yeah.
Dr. Carey. Same thing. And we have at the Evolving Practice Pod, but get in touch with us, find out about what we're doing, when we're doing it. And if you have any more significant questions, we can, even set up a call and just
Yeah.
discover things together. So we'd
Yeah.
be happy to always do that. We also are looking for some guests. So if you know of any good ones, please give a shout out. And we have a couple guests coming up in the near future too. So thanks again for exploring with us, growing with us, and hopefully taking that next step.
Thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure.